Okay, we're going to continue the class on illusion. It's a pretty interesting subject because illusion affects everybody. And the first part, of course, overcoming the physical passions. The passions takes us really deep into illusion. Once they're overcome, we lift a layer off the illusion between that separates us from the true realities in the higher spheres. And then the next step is to remove the illusions connected to glamour and the emotional world. That takes us very deep into illusion also, and this layer must be mastered. But then we come to the mind itself. You take away the passions and uh, uh, toward the material world, and you still have the mind to deal with. And so the mind is very tricky, and it brings many illusions to us that are very difficult for us to see. Um, the Tibetan tells us an important point is that this illusion of the mind, especially the physical attraction, the sex, physical appetites, our passions, our emotions must be put under control. The illusions around them must be mastered, but also in the mind must be put under control to a high degree before you can be trusted. And this point of attainment is called the third initiation. And this is where illusion itself is seen through to the degree that you can look at a situation and see the true reality behind it. And we can see that this is difficult because if you go on the internet or watch TV and watch all these debates that are happening, you see both sides represented. And when there's a disagreement, we have either one of two things is happening. One person is on the right path and the other person is wrong, or else they're both wrong. And quite often they're both quite a bit far away from the true reality. So the the thing that takes people away from the point of truth is illusion, and they're just seeing through the wrong lens. And the disciple needs to be able to see through the right lens. And how does he reach this point of attainment? What's this called when he starts to see things correctly? How does he do that? Asaf, how do you think? How is one able to see correctly? You watch a big argument on TV or on the internet, and people are really going at it. How do you look at it and figure out, well, what is the point of truth here? How can you be accurate? What do you think?
If you are asking without soul contact, then it's by using the principle of discovery.
Yeah, that helps.
Yeah,
Okay. But the ultimate is what?
having soul contact.
Right, right. Once you have soul contact and see through the eyes of the soul, then do you think you'll see fairly accurately?
Yeah, well, you will be able to recognize truth. If it's false, you will not feel it is false, but you will feel when it is true.
Right. Now, is that the end of the story once you see it, or you're going to be on the right track from then on, or is there still a danger of misinterpretation?
Sure, still danger of misinterpretation, but you will be able to correct yourself along the path.
Right, if you stay in contact with your soul, right. So you can, once you get in contact with your soul, you'll get a glimpse of the truth. So you're watching two people arguing, and if you have soul contact, you'll get a flash of, well, this is the true point. These maybe both these guys are missing it, or else person A is he's pretty much on the right track. But then, as you go through your daily life and your thoughts are connected to all kinds of other thoughts, and you're not focusing really on the soul that much, you might throw in a few interpretations from your lower mind that might distort what you actually got from your soul. And so this is why it's so difficult for two people to reach 100% agreement, even if they are advanced souls, because there's so much distortion in this reality that we're in, so many things to pull us away from that point. But in our still moments, we can reach a point to where you can, if you're the disciple focuses on the soul and the inner voice, that inner voice will speak the truth. And this is the key um, to being trusted, in the fact that the person has to reach the point to where he can have a degree of soul contact, get that soul contact down to where he can see, uh, get a glimpse of the true reality, the true situation, so that he cannot be deceived. Because a person can be completely dedicated to, say, a spiritual path. The guy finds a spiritual path and he says, yes, I want to follow this path and go back to the Father's house, to my source, to heaven, or whatever, however he interprets things. He wants to ascend, and so he begins to follow it, and he begins to obey his religion and control his passions and control his emotions, and he has good intentions. But after all that happens, he can still be tricked into seeing things incorrectly. And concerning this, Tghe says that even Hitler was a second degree initiate, and he approached the third, but he didn't make it. And so he was tricked. He got caught in an illusion. And one of the illusions, of course, was that the Jews are the enemy of the, the world and they needed to be eliminated. And he sincerely believed that. You know,
He would create a superior race at the
yeah,
expense of.
Hitler had a number of illusions that he was trapped in. But as far as intentions, his intentions were good. He thought he was doing the right thing. And you take a person that's in illusion, that thinks he's doing the right thing, but he's really doing the wrong thing. He's about as dangerous a person as you can get, because he's totally dedicated. And
Well, I tell you, if I'm watching a debate, I'm asking myself, is the conclusion from this debate going to be liberating or confining? Is it going to try to impose laws that will limit my movement, or give me more freedom? That's how I look at it as another key, as along with your intuition, and your intuition will tell you, is this a liberating argument or a confining argument?
yeah, and the astral plane itself is a pure illusion. Tghe tells us that the astral plane is the manipulator or the world where the lower emotions are at play. And the astral plane is created by an interplay of the higher mind with the physical realm. And the true physical energy is your etheric body. The body that we see is not our really true body. Our true body is etheric, and the etheric is energy that keeps our physical body in shape. And that's why when you die, your etheric energy leaves and your body just starts to fall apart and disintegrate. But as long as the life force is in your physical body holds its shape and becomes functional. But the true physical body is the etheric, that double that's in your physical body. And the interplay of that with the mind produces the astral zone. And the astral energy is only affects the human, doesn't affect the animals or the vegetables or the minerals or not even the hierarchy. In the hierarchy's mind, the lower emotions do not even exist for them. They don't even deal with them in their reality. Just like the lower lives don't deal with the lower emotions that we have. But it's basically the human kingdom has created the astral realm, and it's the subject of a lot of illusion. And in the astral is a reverse of everything. Like when you look in a mirror, you don't really see what you really look like. You see a reverse image. And so when you actually look in a mirror, you don't see the real you. You see a reverse. And the creation of the astral energy reverses everything and it makes it very difficult to see the true reality because the natural tendency is to see things in reverse. And so to see things correctly, we have to ascend to the higher mind. And the lower mind won't do it. The lower mind is associated with the physical brain and the computer brain and how it functions. But the higher mind functions more on the intuitive level and sees things correctly. So when we ascend to the higher mind, we can see that emotions tend to reverse truth. And you watch these people argue on TV, the more emotional they are, the more they seem to have everything upside down. Whereas the guy that's calmest is usually closest to the truth. You'll notice. Whereas the guy that's really lets his anger go and starts calling the other guy names and stuff, well, he's usually the farthest from the truth. So what the disciple needs to do is transcend the astral realm and see how much of everybody's thinking is reversed because of the way that they feel, and see that the feeling nature tends to take truth and turn it upside down. And we need to turn it right side up to be able to see correctly. And to see correctly is a real challenge. There's two things that are required to see correctly. One is to just go to the reasoning mind and use what people just say common sense. Use your just natural common sense as much as you can. And then the second thing is to have a connection to your own soul, have soul contact. Soul contact is the ultimate, because common sense takes you so far, and then you have to have a degree of soul contact to connect, to bring down the intuition so that the disciple can see correctly. Now, what's interesting is one of the biggest illusions that we have is about ourselves. People do not realize what they would do in different situations. Like in the past, there's been tremendous illusions fostered on humanity and on Nazi Germany, for instance. Nazism and following Hitler was able. Hitler was able to accomplish what he did because he was able to captivate people in the illusion that he had. He shared his illusion to the extent that other people bought into it. And people bought into it that would have never dreamed that they would have done such a thing. And the same thing with slaveholders in the past. In the past, slavery, the principle of slavery operated on the illusion that the one race or one type of individual is superior to another, and people need to be the lower need to be subjected to the higher in this way. And that was slavery operated and for thousands of years because of this illusion. And another big illusion in our history was when we burnt heretics at the stake. And so we find people that we didn't agree with, we just burned them at the stake or persecuted them or tortured them. And when people did that, they thought they were doing what was right. Now, when people study history today, they look back on those people and they think, boy, I would have never done that. And Jesus pointed that out. He says, now, to the people that were opposed to Jesus, he says, now you think if you would have lived in the days of the prophets, that you wouldn't have persecuted the prophets. But I say unto you, you are children of those who murdered the prophets, and you would do the same thing today. And of course, they wound up crucifying him. So they were just as bad as the people, as those people in the past. But he pointed out that important thing. He says, you think if you'd have lived back then, you would not have persecuted the prophets. But you are wrong. You would have, and you did, because you lived back then, because there is such a thing as reincarnation. So anyway, we tend, a lot of humanity tends to have this superior feeling about themselves. Yeah, I wouldn't have done that. But to illustrate, well, maybe are we that superior? Would we have done that? Would we have been a slave owner? Would we have burned the heretics at the stake? If we'd lived in Germany under Hitler, would we have shot the Jews if they were lined up to be shot, or gassed, and felt good about it? Would we have been like them? And so a guy named Milgram back in the 60s was wondering about that. He says, it's amazing. He was amazed how Hitler got so many people to go along with him. And he thought, was there something wrong with the German people, or is this something that he took advantage of that's in everybody? So he did an experiment, and it's called the Milgram Experiment. And I'm going to show a short video about that kind of illustrates it quite well. Let me share this with you, all being well. think I got the right one.
Are ordinary people
Oh,
able
wait.
to do terrible things? And if so, how many would give a strong electric shock to an innocent other just because they are following an order? To answer these questions, we can look at the controversial work of a man who just wanted to find answers to his family's horrific past. Are ordinary people able to do terrible things? And if so, how many would give a strong electric shock to an innocent other just because they are following an order? To answer these questions, we can look at the controversial work of a man who just wanted to find answers to his family's horrific past. In 1961, Stanley Milgram, a young psychologist, wanted to find out how ordinary citizens were able to commit acts of unspeakable evil in Nazi Germany. His theory: some people do horrific things because they obey even the most wicked leaders. To test his theory, Milgram designed a clever experiment that changed our understanding of human behavior forever. The Milgram experiment involved 3 people: an authority called the experimenter, who was dressed in a lab coat to appear powerful, a volunteer who was assigned to be the teacher, and a victim, the so-called student. The teacher was the test subject, whereas the experimenter and student were both actors. Following orders, the teacher would test a student who was sitting in another room by asking them questions. For every wrong answer, the experimenter would ask the teacher to inflict an electric shock, up to a life-threatening 450 volts. Before he began, Milgram asked his colleagues what they expected the outcome to be. Almost all of them agreed that only a few of the volunteers would obey and inflict electric shocks on innocent others. What do you think? Would anyone administer shocks higher than 300 volts? Milgram then advertised his experiment as a study on memory and learning at the campus of Yale University. People signed up without any idea of what they were really getting themselves into. The experiment began with the volunteers meeting the other participants. The volunteers then pulled a card to draw their role. Little did they know that they could only draw the teacher. Next, they would be given a sample of a light electric shock in order to experience firsthand what the others would have to go through. To start, the experimenter and the teacher were seated in one room, and the student was strapped to a chair in an adjacent room. The teacher and student were able to communicate, but not see each other. The experimenter then gave the teacher a list of questions. The teacher would then read out the questions, and the student would press a button to indicate a response. For every false answer, the teacher would administer a shock, starting at 15 volts and increasing in 15-volt increments up to 450. What the teacher didn't know was that the student didn't actually receive any shocks. Instead, a tape recorder was used to play various responses. In the beginning, the teacher would hear protest or bangs against the wall. If shocks would increase, the reactions would become louder, and in case someone would go all the way, the learner would fall silent. In case the teacher became hesitant and asked to stop, the experimenter would resort to the following 4 prompts. First, he would say, "Please continue." If that was unsuccessful, he would go on with, "The experiment requires that you continue." Then, "It is absolutely essential that you continue." And lastly, "You have no other choice. You must go on." Along the way, the volunteers displayed signs of extreme tension, such as sweating, trembling, and even uncontrollable laughing fits. The experiment would be stopped only after all 4 prompts had been used, or the maximum voltage of 450 volts had been given 3 times. Milgram found that, of all participants, 100% gave at least 300 volts, and 65% went all the way to 450 volts. The experiment was later criticized for being unethical, because it deceived innocent people into performing what seemed to be terrible acts of violence. However, his experiment was successfully replicated many times, involving different populations and leading to similar findings. Milgram himself left us with this to think about. It may be that we are puppets controlled by the strings of society. But at least we are puppets with perception, with awareness, and perhaps our awareness is the first step to our liberation.
What do you think? Would you follow or question the orders if you were one of Milgram's participants? And what can we as a society teach future generations to help prevent horrific acts that can happen when ordinary people blindly follow an authority? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.
Okay, that gives a good rundown of the Milgram experiment. But has anyone ever been shocked by more than 110 volts? In the United States, that's the number of volts we're shocked with.
I have. In Europe and Israel, it's 220 volts. And
Have you been shocked by that?
yeah, accidentally I touched a wire and it got shocked. Yeah.
Was it a pretty good jolt?
Yeah.
Well, 110 gives you a pretty good jolt here if you want to tap that.
Well, it's dangerous. You can get a heart attack and die, actually.
Yeah, even like 220 would be, if you had a bad heart, it could kill you. Now, what's interesting is that 100% of the participants was willing to go up to 300. Now, Curtis, you've been shocked by 110, I'll bet.
Yeah, it's not fun. It's very unpleasant. If you're standing in water, it can kill you.
So would you willingly shock some friend with 110 just for the heck of it? Would you do that with even 110?
One time when I was really young, I had my younger brother pee on a hot fence. Of course, it jolted him, but it was temporary. But I wouldn't, I wouldn't force someone to hold on to a hot fence for.
Well, I have a story about you when you were a kid. Your dad, Relina, what'd you have to say?
Sorry, I was talking to my phone, but actually I have been shocked as well. It burned my hand. I have a scar from it.
It's kind of funny when I was with your dad and he was wondering if he had a fence, he had a hot wire to keep the cows in. Mm-hmm. And he was wondering if it was turned on. And
it was turned
your dad says to me, touch that and see if it's hot. And I says, no, I'm not touching it. And then he brings Curtis. He says, Curtis, touch that. And I said, I wouldn't let you touch it. I said, no, that's not right.
So who ended up touching it?
None of us. We know. I don't know if we ever figured out if it was hot or not.
Even if you just barely touch it, it zaps you.
Yeah. So what's interesting, if you talk to the average guy, are you willing to? Would you be willing to shock some friend of yours with more than 110 volts? They would probably say, no, I wouldn't even want to shock them with 110 volts because that gives you a pretty good shock right there. And would you be willing to go 300? And what percentage of the people do you think would say, no, I wouldn't be willing to? Yet 100% of the participants here were willing to go 300. 100%. So what does this tell us about ourselves? Do we really know ourselves or not? Yeah, under the
that'd kill you. 450, I don't know how you could even endure that.
Yeah, but what was interesting is that once they went to 300, 65% went to 450, which would have been death. And it just shows that they were able to be captured into this illusion largely because they weren't thinking. Because if they were thinking, what would they come up with? Well, if I kill this person, I'm going to be prosecuted. But that was out of their minds because they said, well, I don't know about this. And the guy in the white coat says, well, don't worry about it. I'm taking responsibility. Oh, you're taking responsibility. Okay, I'll go ahead and kill him.
All ahead.
but if they were thinking, they would be thinking, well, he says he's taking responsibility, but if this guy dies and I'm pressing the button, I'd be prosecuted. So heck, I'm not going to. If they were thinking about it, they wouldn't have done it. They wouldn't have even gotten a 300, because 300, if the guy had a weak heart, that would kill him. Okay, so if the guy was really thinking, none of them would have done it, but they weren't thinking. They bypassed the mind and just went with what the guy was saying without thinking about it. And so this is one of the keys to overcoming illusion, is when you're presented with something, run it through your mind, your just basic common sense, and think about the results of what you're being presented with. And this is what these people didn't do. Yeah, 110. Well, if if the average person were doing it, they'd say, well, a small buzz where you just feel a buzz of small volt electricity. If you give the wrong answer, that'd be okay. I'd be willing to do that. But if you think about it, you wouldn't even go up to 110, because 110 is very uncomfortable.
Well, how would you like it? You have to reverse the, the student into the recipient, the victim.
Yeah.
I mean, how'd you like to get zapped? 10 is still a lot of, in the electric chair, what was the voltage that went through? Do you know? Like
I
1200?
don't know. Yeah, it was pretty high there. But even there, some people took them a while to get
Sat there and burned.
zapped enough to die. But yeah, it's kind of funny. The big conflict Tesla and Edison had was that Edison or Tesla wanted to go with the
Alternating current.
alternating current. That's what I was looking for. And Edison wanted to go with the DC because he thought it was a lot safer. So what he did, he had people electrocuted with the alternating current just to show them how destructive it was. And that put the fear of God in a lot of people, kind of set the alternating current back. But eventually it prevailed because people realized it could be controlled.
He killed elephants. He executed animals and elephants, and that's
Yeah.
what he did.
Yeah, and I think they even had a man executed with it, criminal. Yeah, but
Actually, DC is more dangerous than AC, but whatever.
that's what?
DC is more dangerous than AC.
Is it?
Yeah.
And how can you explain that?
Yeah, because DC it creates a current only in one direction. The current doesn't alternate. So you can kill with less voltage with DC than with AC.
Yeah. Okay, well, I haven't heard that before. Pretty interesting. So anyway,
Also, well, I was just going to say that a shock, if you receive a shock, that means you don't die. If you're electrocuted, that means you've died. Just a point of clarification. Electrocution equals death. That's how they define it.
Yeah. So anyway, what we learned from the Milgram experiment is the average person doesn't really understand how he would function in certain circumstances. In normal circumstances, the average guy wouldn't shock his neighbor or something like that. But in the right circumstance, the average person would be willing to put his neighbor to death.
Well, that's what happened with the Nazis.
Yeah.
Nazis, all those young kids, they were programmed to go out and kill the Allies, and they wouldn't have done it normally, probably, but they were sanctioned under under Hitler it would be okay. It was the right thing to do. Thousands of them.
Yeah, and to escape this trap of illusion, a person has to be close to a third degree initiate, where he is able to see through illusion, because none of these people were able to see through the illusion to avoid giving an innocent person a 300-volt shock.
Wow.
None of them were able to see that because there was no third-degree initiate, sir. And but this is something we have to keep in mind. We have to look at ourselves. Well, look at ourselves honestly. If I was in Nazi Germany, what would I have done? If I was back in the days of the witch trials, would I have supported putting a witch to death and burning her at the stake? Or a heretic? If I disagree, well, look at people today. People today are saying, if you're not in my political party, I'd just as soon you died. A lot of people are actually saying that today. So it's a somewhat disturbing part of our nature how little we do not understand ourselves. We think we are superior to these people of the past, but the chances are we may have actually been there and been the bad guys in the past because we live more than one life. And so I believe it was Socrates, he said, a life unexamined is not worth living. And so that's what we have to do. A major step to overcoming illusion is to examine our life and put ourselves in a situation. So if I was in this situation, what would I really do? Would I be better than my ancestors? If I lived in Nazi Germany, would I have just been like them? If I had lived in the Old South, would I have supported slavery? Would I have wanted to fight against Abraham Lincoln? Yeah. So it's important that we realize how powerful these forces are that could take us in the wrong direction. Because until we are able to see through this illusion and really recognize ourselves for who we really are, we cannot be trusted by the hierarchy. So this is why the hierarchy looks down upon people that are usable. And if we are subject to illusion, like these guys in the Migram Experiment, if we could be one of those that would press the button to go 300 volts or higher, we cannot be trusted. And so this is the aim for the disciples. We need to reach that point to where we can be trusted by the higher lives so that we can become the true servants of humanity. Okay, any comments before we sign off on that?
Well, during the Inquisition, they were killing all kinds of Protestants, people that they felt were going against the will of God. And one of the inquisitors said, "Well, what happens if we by accident should kill some of our own people?" And the chief inquisitor said, "Well, that's okay. Just kill them all and let God sort it out."
Yeah. Yeah. And
So,
they called it an act of faith to burn somebody at the stake. It was
yeah.
it was an act of true faith. And so, well, yeah, I want to be one of the faithful. So let's burn the guy. So it's amazing. And it's amazing that this generation we're in, each generation does this. They look back and think, boy, we wouldn't have been like those guys. We're superior to those guys. But we need to understand ourselves and our weaknesses. But under normal circumstances, the average guy is a decent fellow. He's willing to, if he sees somebody with a flat tire, he's willing to help him out or whatever. And under normal circumstances, here's the way I look at it. Under normal circumstances, 90% of humanity is pretty decent toward each other. Then there's 10% that are obnoxious, or 9%, and then there may be 1% that are dangerous. But under exceptional circumstances, 90% of the people are dangerous, and only 10% are resistant to the danger, and 1% can really be trusted under exceptional circumstances. So the circumstances determines our how we react a lot.
So
Okay.
Stauffenberger must have been a third-degree initiate.
Yeah, he kind of got sucked in at the beginning, but he realized what was going on as he woke up there. Okay, my friends, good to talk to you, and we will continue this discussion on illusion and see what Dwell Cool has to say about it. It has some interesting things. Until then, may the true reality be with you.
Amen.